Hi, I am Monica Brant, one of the world's first true fitness pioneers starting back in 1991. I helped launch the fitness industry while traveling internationally, meeting fans worldwide to share my style of fitness to the bodybuilding community. After a decade of fitness competitions, I earned one of the world's most prestigious titles, the IFBB Fitness Olympia Championships. Moving into the new millennium, I was the first IFBB Fitness Olympia athlete to transition into the new professional figure division and compete for close to another 20 years. After 15 years as an IFBB professional, I tried another organization and won the WBFF World Pro Figure Championships both 2010 and 2013. I am a true athlete and made my way into racing into the Masters USATF sprint events, placing top 3 at the World's Masters track meet in all 3 events, the 100, 200, and 400 meter races. Besides athletics, I have been honored with over 100 magazine covers both nationally and internationally. Since it's always a blessing to share with others, over the last 15 years, I've hosted women's fitness events and worked with clients, helping them discover how to live radiantly in all areas of life, body, mind, soul, and spirit. The Monica Brant Show is one of the ways I am honoring the legendary athletes, powerhouse individuals, and nutrition gurus that have laid a strong foundation in the past, help keep the current industry flowing, and offer inspiration to the next generations. Excited about tonight. It's a great night. It's been a great day. And let's see who we've got on here. Who's here? Who's here? Where are you guys from? Tell me where you're from. I'd love to know who's saying hi and where you are. I am in San Antonio, Texas, in case you're curious. But we have a very, very special guest on tonight, and I can't wait to share this gentleman with you and all of his knowledge that we can wrap up in as quick as we can within an hour, maybe an hour 5 if we have to go over 5 minutes. I'm going to do my best to keep it short. So without any further ado, my special guest tonight is a Canadian husband and father. He's a best-selling author of the book Eat, Stop, Eat, which is one of my favorite books. One of the very first books explaining the science behind intermittent fasting. And I know he's going to talk about intermittent feeding, which was really cool for me to learn about too. Brad obtained his graduate degree in human biology and nutritional sciences while studying the effects of intermittent fasting on human metabolism. Kona, let's roll his reel and get him on here.
And not much. What's going on with you?
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you and see your face. It's like we're just sitting in the same room almost.
Pretty almost exactly the same, yeah.
Except we're like a whole country apart.
We are a country apart, absolutely. I gotta tell you, in that opening, there are so many iconic pictures of you that I just remember from like the beginning of the fitness industry, that 90s to 2000s. Just so many of those pictures. Like I remember that exact picture hitting the magazines, just being like, wow, like Monica's on her game. So it's amazing seeing those still out there.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always fun for me to reminisce. Although I kind of get tired of hearing myself, and I'm like, can't we turn that one off so I don't have to hear it? But it is certainly fun, and that's one of the reasons that my husband put up my some of my covers back here just this year. We had these up. They've been in boxes ever since. Ever since.
Oh, no, you gotta have those up. Absolutely.
I know. It's been kind of fun. So without further ado, I have to say thank you so much to my sponsors. We wouldn't have a show without sponsors, of course. And we have 2 special giveaways tonight. Well, actually 3, but I'm gonna do the 2 right now. Okay. So you guys, how this works is whoever answers my questions that I have about Brad, whoever answers the questions first in the comments receives the giveaways from the sponsors, and unfortunately they have to be USA residents because they're USA companies and they can't ship over borders right now. So hopefully you guys will understand that. So whoever answers the questions correctly first in the comment section, don't DM me, please, will win the giveaway. So my first giveaway is for Aloe Life International. It's a product I've been using for years. It helps with all kinds of digestive health. There's topical products. Name one other book that Brad has authored besides Eat, Stop, Eat. Okay.
Yeah.
I know, it's awesome. So there's more books, so you guys can go check that out online. And then number 2, what is Brad's favorite book? His own personal favorite book.
Yeah.
Not one that he authored, but one that he reads, and it's his favorite book. And he said it should be easy for you guys to go find it if you go to his Instagram account, maybe.
Instagram, yeah.
So, okay, you guys, and at the end of the show, I will announce the winners for that, and we do have another special thing that we're going to do later in the show. So, without any more jibber jabber, Brad, how are you in this crazy pandemic? How are you and your family, and where are you right now?
We are doing well. So we are in Canada. I live in Canada, so that's where we are. So right now we are actually vacationing in the Thousand Islands. So it's in the St. Lawrence, and it's just between Canada and the States. So if you actually look out this pitch black window, you will see. Okay. I'm waving to you right now. Yep. So yeah, we're out here doing some exploring, and then the kids start school probably next week in Canada. So we got a little bit of time to just sort of stretch our summer out a bit.
Nice. Okay. Every time you say Thousand Island, I think of my husband. My husband's name is Brad, right? And he loves Thousand Island dressing. That's pretty much all he'll eat. So it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh, Thousand Island dressing, which is not really healthy, but it's what he eats.
And you are in
if I get him to eat salad, that is.
Yeah. So you're in Texas right now, right?
That's right. San Antonio. We're right outside of San Antonio. Good old Texas. We love it here.
So right now in Toronto, your Dallas Stars are playing for the Stanley Cup, or in the finals at least, right? So yay, Texas for that one. Got a little hockey.
Oh, well, you kind of threw me off there. Hockey. I was like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Hockey. There is another sport. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that update. It's good to kind of keep up with the hockey pieces. Yep. So I'd love to kind of dive into your background, because you don't just come from, randomness and then all of a sudden you write a book like this that has revolutionized, the intermittent fasting, nutritional, and all of that. I mean, I've been so enthralled with your book, and I can't wait to get into that. But I just would love to hear more about your background and how you got into the nutritional industry and what that looks like from, your childhood, as far back as you want to go.
It goes far back. It actually goes back to person we probably both met Lou Ferrigno, and his movie, his TV series, The Incredible Hulk. And I used to watch that with my dad, and I think it was only on for a couple seasons. But I just remember being mesmerized when on the show, David Banner, not Bruce for some reason, but David Banner transformed into the Incredible Hulk. And back then there was no CGI, so they hired Lou Ferrigno, a 6'5" bodybuilder, to play the part of the Hulk. And so you can imagine as a young kid seeing an actual human being just that big on screen, but also the concept of the transformation from little David Banner into the Hulk. And that really got me going into just sort of what allows that to happen, what allows someone to get bigger and stronger, et cetera. And so it was that TV show and just those memories that kind of drove me. So I went from that to, at a very young age, I think I was easily 16, getting into working at my local supplement shop. And then that got me really interested in the nutrition side of it all. So you sort of have your exercise and your nutrition part. And nutrition, the science behind that really sort of spoke to me. So I followed that into a degree in nutritional sciences. And then I took that and moved into the supplement industry. And I worked at a very small supplement company in Toronto, Canada, that grew into a very massive company.
Okay.
And I was there for 7 years. And then I got the itch to go back to school. And that's when I went back to study, not fasting, but I actually went back to study sort of protein synthesis and muscle building and fat loss. And that was the time that we were all eating 6, 8, 10, 12 meals a day. We divide them up into,
right.
half a banana, a scoop of yogurt, and whey protein. And then we'd eat that same thing in 2 hours and then 2 hours again. And we all just sort of thought it was the right thing to do, right? Yeah, you're like, I still can't look at cans of tuna the same, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We just assumed that was, the proven right way to eat, and we had to eat that way. Because if we didn't, we would lose muscle, our metabolisms would crash, and we would gain fat. Didn't matter how much or how little we were eating. If we weren't eating frequently, just bad things would happen. And then what happened in my grad work is I started with the assumption that was correct. And so I would start pulling papers to read about all the bad things would happen when you missed a meal. The problem was each paper came out, didn't really say bad things were happening, right? So I did what, any very confident 28-year-old would do. I took that paper, threw it in the trash, and moved to the next paper. And that paper kind of agreed. It's like, wow, you don't lose all your muscle in 3 hours if you miss a meal. And so you chuck that paper and you move to the next one. And all of a sudden it was a dilemma, right? You either have to just keep the blinders on. There's a horse reference for you.
Yeah.
And going, or you have to realize that maybe you don't know as much as you think you know, and you got to change direction. So I decided to study what happens when you don't eat. And that was my first dive into fasting. You can't study fasting in general because obviously it goes on forever. So I just shortened it down. So we decided on short-term fasting. So I did 12 to 72 hours. And then over the course of my studies, we looked at what happens if you do it intermittently. And for me, that meant on and off, or every once in a while. So we kind of settled on once or twice a week. And then once or twice a week, fasting for 12 to 72 hours became 24 hours. And 24 was really simple because you and I could start fasting tonight at 8, and then we know we'd fast till tomorrow at 8. Really easy, simple to remember, allows for a lot of flexibility throughout your week. So I went from wanting to become the Incredible Hulk to talking to people about not eating. So it's a very weird, strange path, but it just led me to where I am today.
I just love it. I love it. Well, of course, Lou was one of the first bodybuilders that I met as well back in '95, and he was always so gracious. And of course, then I got to know him while I lived in LA for 10 years and was at Gold's Gym. So he was always very good guy to talk to and just be around. And I can see as a young boy, because I remember watching the Hulk too, of course I wasn't into all the muscle. Like, I was an athletic girl. I just was athletic. I was into horses and track and stuff, but I didn't know about bodybuilding. So it was, but when I met him, I was like, this is so cool. My brother and I used to watch the show. So I definitely, that was super fun. Well, I just love where you're going with this, because I too, in the industry for so long, reading the magazines, having different nutritionists, eat. And that's what I coached and that's what I shared in seminars. And it, I guess looking at it now, like I know that that can work if you are an elite athlete using and needing all that energy. Because I mean, I was a gymnast and I was running sprints, and I wasn't a gymnast, but I had to do gymnastics for fitness, you know,
Right.
and then I was doing all this interval training. And so I was, it worked because I was using the calories so much.
Absolutely.
As I've gotten older, now I have to just stop for a second because in 2013, I was racing in track. So we're 2020 now. And I started fitness in 1991. So
Amazing.
all of those years, 91 all the way through to 2012, I was eating, as you know, pretty regularly all that food, right? 4,
Yeah.
5, 6 times a day, on and on and on. And carrying all the food around, you know the deal, right? Like you always had to pack your food,
Everywhere. Yeah.
right? And then also the travel. So every time I would travel somewhere, I had to pack my food. In fact, in 2010, I went to Iceland for an appearance.
Oh, is it amazing? I've never been.
Well, it was really cool. Like there's some great, great things. We got to go on I almost said an igloo, not an igloo. What is a glacier? We were in an igloo. No, glacier. No, yeah, it was really amazing. But I took food there. I traveled with frozen food for every day because I didn't know what and thankfully I did, because the hotel I was in did not have good food, and it was not like you could just go down to the, local market and get food or anything. It was really different. So I'm glad I had the food because I needed it at the point. But long story short, it was always this big thing. So in 2013, I asked a friend of mine that is pretty an expert in nutrition, excuse me, Jimmy Smith. I don't know if you've heard his name.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. And
Yep.
I asked him, I said, look, I'm doing sprinting now, and I'd like to have someone help me with my nutrition for sprinting. Long story short, he had me, write everything out, and he's like, look, I'm going to keep everything similar. He says, but I'm going to have you start doing fasting. And I was like, what? Aren't I going to lose my muscle? I remember the panic I felt inside.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling. If you're worried about losing muscle, that can be stressful.
Well, it's because we learned that for years, right? All the magazines and and fasting was like, no, you don't do that. You'll lose muscle. You won't be able to do it, and then, and because you're used to eating all the time, which I know you'll talk on here in a bit, because you're used to eating all the time, your blood sugars are kind of raised, right? All the time, ready for that next meal. So if you're not getting the carbs in, your body starts kind of like, you feel like you're going to faint because you need food. And then that's when the hangry comes in and all that. So, right. So he was instrumental on getting me to start fasting 1 day a week, just 12 hours, that little intermittent kind of thing. And then I've taken it off since then. So it's been eight years for me now. And I just love it. Of course, your book made so much difference for me, and just what I've learned from you. And I'm so excited to visit a little bit more about some of these specifics.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I want to hear about your sprinting. That's what always gets me. Whenever you start talking about that, I get so excited because it just sounds really cool. And the fact you've done it for so long is amazing.
Well, are you interviewing me now?
I think we're going to have to, right? People have to ask you questions too.
I know this is, at the end of the day, this just kind of feels more like conversation for me with people that I've known for so long and people that I've had the opportunity to get to know. And I know sharing what you know is really fun for me, for my viewers and stuff too. Well, sprinting, I've been a sprinter my entire that I can remember. I mean, I used to have to run away from my brother and his friends because they would throw rocks at me. We lived out in the country, or the little red beads off the trees, or spear grass.
Fast, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know what spear grass is?
I don't.
It's really terrible. All of this, because we grew up way out in the country, and this weed, it's a weed. It grows in this clump, and maybe the clumps are like this big around, and in this circle area would be 100 or 75 little bitty, literally spears, and they are they're shaped like, it would be shaped like a spear or an arrow, maybe, I guess, They call it speargrass, but the seed on it is a very sharp point. So there's all of these seeds in a little bundle. You can pull it all up like this and chunk it, and you would have all these seeds that have a little blade of grass on them. And so when they're ready to go, the wind picks them up, and then they can plant because they have a little spear, like pointy edge, and that hurts when you when they all get thrown at you at once. It really is. So sprinting has always been my thing. I started running again. I've always done sprints for workout, but I started racing in the Masters USATF. So I ran 1, 2, and 400. In 2012, I got to run at the Olympic trials, not in the Olympics, because I know people get confused, but I got to run at a 400-meter women's invitational, which was, they took the top 8 women over 40 by time. We were invited to go do an invitational race at the Olympic trials that year. And I went in on the 5th fastest time. I came out with a 3rd fastest time. So I got a bronze medal, and that was cool. And so I ran track for a few years. I got to go to the Masters Worlds in 2013. I raced down there, and I came home with silvers and bronze. I didn't get a first. Well, I got first with being on the relays, but so that's kind of my thing. I ended up not continuing. My last competitions were in 2016, and I was on the track training in 2016 on the track and doing Ninja Warrior stuff, and that's how I got ready for my 2016 shows.
Wow. That's a way to get ready. That's for sure.
Well, everyone thinks I've been they're like, oh, you go in the gym every day. What are you in there 3 hours a day? And I'm like, no, like for that, I was in the gym twice a week, and I was in the Ninja Warrior gym 3 times a week, and I was on the track 3 times a week. So I was like, the gym ended up to be, but anyways, and all through all that, I was doing intermittent fasting, 24-hour fasting. And of course, when I, read your book and kind of learned about the maybe the 20 and 24-hour fasting, and really learned about that. So let's dive into that just a little bit with, I guess, there's so many different parts of it. I know everyone's going to be like, what about the protein? What about your hormones? And talking also about, because there's so many people that think that they get low blood sugar from not eating. Right. And I always think it's like phantom low blood sugar. So maybe let's talk about that first, unless you have a different route you want to go, because I know there's so many different pieces.
The hormonal aspect of fasting, particularly actually the growth hormone side, was what really got me interested. It was the relationship between growth hormone and insulin. And while we often think of growth hormone as what makes children grow tall, it has a very important role in our physiology in fuel selection. So it works with insulin to help dictate the fed or fasted state, right? So when you're in the fed state, we've just eaten, we've had a big bowl of pasta, some chicken, we're in the fed state, and we have nutrients coming into our body, and we need to deal with those nutrients. And that's one of the primary roles of insulin. Things are coming in, and insulin is saying, okay, I need to put you in the right spots. Slowly, as those nutrients disappear, insulin goes down, growth hormone goes up, and growth hormone takes on a different role. It's in fasted state now. And growth hormone sort of controls fasted state and says, okay, you have no nutrients coming in from food, but luckily I've got nutrients stored all over your body. Don't worry about it, right? So I've got some glucose, some sugar from your liver, and I'm going to use that to keep your blood sugar levels kind of constant. And, you might need some energy. I'm going to give you some of that from your body fat, right? We're going to break down some of that fat. We're going to release some energy, and you're going to use that day to day. And so it's that transition back and forth of this fasted state to fed state and fed state to fasted state. It's kind of a normal rhythm for your average person. Now, it gets a bit dysregulated when you eat all day, every day. I mean, I do like to think of a lot of us as having one big meal that starts when we wake up and ends hours.
Right.
Right. So the problem with that is that if you're always in this fed state and glucose is always being provided to you via your food, in fact, you've got so much of it coming in because you're constantly eating, your body's kind of trying to panic and figure out, where am I going to put all of this? Mm-hmm. So then on the instant, all of a sudden it's gone. It takes a little bit for you to get going and realize, oh, okay, hold on. I've got this giant store now in my liver. I'm just going to release a little bit of that. So every once in a while, there is that feeling of low blood sugar. But more often than not, you're just dealing with the feeling of, I'm not digesting right now. And there is a small, very small subset of the population that does deal with blood sugar issues.
Mm-hmm.
But for a lot of people, when they start fasting and you say, okay, what I want you to do, we're going to monitor your blood sugar levels. And you tell me when you think you're having an episode of low blood sugar. And they'll say, okay, now I'm feeling a little off right now. My blood sugar is definitely low. Chances are you're going to measure that blood sugar and it's going to be normal. And what they're doing is they're just used to eating at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And eating is so entrained. It's such part of our life. So we eat with certain people at certain times of the day. We like certain foods and certain occasions. When we disrupt that pattern, it takes a little bit for your body to realize that it's got to be flexible now, right? And so it's just a breaking of that pattern more than anything else that causes those feelings when you first start fasting. Just getting used to the idea of, okay, I'm not grabbing my normal coffee with sugar on the way to work today, and I've just got to get used to that. I'm going to have a water instead, or I'm going to have a black coffee.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a little bit, and then you slide right into it, no problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess a lot of it too is just getting the brain to wrap around it. I have some clients that I have fast, and before they even try it, sometimes they're negative about it, right? Like, oh, I can't do that. They haven't even tried it.
Yeah,
or, it's just
bad place to start.
Right. And I'm like, you gotta, it's a muscle that has to be built, and it's like building up that brain capacity to take on the challenge. I just think fasting actually helps people to be stronger mentally.
I agree. I mean, one of my favorite things is when people talk to me about sports nutrition specifically. I like the idea of people having a few practices, whatever the sport is, whether they're fighters or they're football players, etc. Do it fasted, because you know if you can do it fasted, you can do it fed.
Right.
And that gets rid of the, with a lot of athletes, they have their superstitions about the exact bowl of pasta from the exact restaurant before the exact event. And I like to break that up. I'd be like, you just fought hard for 12 minutes. You haven't eaten in 24 hours, right? So if you can do this now, then, if you go to your fight and you get off the plane, or your plane was delayed and you're late showing up, you don't exactly get the right meal you wanted. If your routine is slightly off, I know you can still perform well. But it's getting people in that mindset, and that those first fasts, even the idea of fasting, if you think you're doing something wrong, it causes a level of anxiety that is going to.
Brant. I'm Monica Brant. You're watching the Monica Brant Show, and I have author, advocate of intermittent fasting, Brad Pilon. Did I say it right? Pilon.
Yes. Pilon. Yeah, I like to try to put a little French in it. I appreciate it.
I'm trying, I just have to have a little fun with it. Pilon. All right, guys. So we're going to step right over here to Tanya's question for Brad. So I'm going to read the question for you, Brad. How does intermittent fasting work for people who get hypoglycemic if they go too long without eating? She's not diabetic, but have been diagnosed by endocrinologist with and get hypoglycemic. If I don't eat often enough or eat just carbs alone, of course. I don't take insulin, just manage with the diet. Ready, set, go. You have 10 seconds to answer that. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so number one is with intermittent fasting, I can't stress enough. It's just, we got to be flexible, right? So if you can't do 24, do 20. Can't do 20, do 18. If you can't do 24 without having a little bit of sugar in your coffee, have a little bit of sugar in your coffee. There's a difference between being flexible and being lazy, right? So lazy is just, having sips and snacks and stuff through your fast because you feel like it. Being flexible is realizing that the little sips or snacks actually make the fast better. So outside of making sure you're being flexible is, if we want to maintain the sugar levels in our blood, there's things we can do. Number one would be a little bit of activity. You would be amazed with just getting up for a brisk walk or just even moving around will do to help with maintaining blood sugar. Although you would think that would cause the muscles to absorb sugar, it also tells the liver, hey, we need to sort of release some sugar. So moving around helps. Another one I like is a little bit of a hack, if you will. Stay warm. Is throw an extra sweater on, maybe make sure the house isn't too air conditioned down. You will find that there will be a relationship between your body temperature and the temperature around you and how well your body manages your blood sugar. So be flexible, get up and move around, and stay warm. Those should help.
I love that. I end up getting, when I've been fasting for a while, I end up getting like shivery.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it though. I'm like, yes.
Well, you're in an interesting spot, right? So when you eat, I always want to like grab for an apple or pear to hold it just for but when you eat something, there is a heat of digestion. That food being broken down by your body creates heat. And it contributes to your core body temperature, right? Your core body temperature is protected by not only the clothes you wear, but by your body fat. So when you're very, very lean and you're dieting, what you've done is you've slightly reduced your core body temperature, but you don't really have as much body fat to defend it. So you do have to make sure when you're fasting, when you're very lean, is stay warm. So, throw a sweater on, have a hot tea, that sort of thing. But just sort of protect your temperature a bit, and that'll help.
How do you feel about using fats like a good MCT, potentially bulletproof brain octane oil, as opposed to having maybe the sugar in the coffee? Would you advise maybe if someone just can't do, they're shooting for that 14, they're at 12, they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to have something.
Yeah, no.
How would you feel it? The brain octane oil or something of similar, or coconut oil in water with lemon or something like that?
Similar, whatever it takes to make it through. So first off, sometimes you're just not going to make it through. I mean, I've been doing this for way too long now, 15 years. And there are times where I don't do 24. And I'm like, you know what? That was good enough, right? And then you just have to realize some days are shorter than others, and you roll with it. Other times it is just a little bit of something in your coffee, or maybe you just need a sparkling water because you wanted bubbles and you wanted some sort of texture.
Right.
You just have to be realistic and flexible with it, and go with whatever works for you. End of day, whatever works, whatever allows you to kind of meet the goal you were setting for yourself, providing it was a reasonable goal, is good, right? So if it takes a little bit of MCT oil in your coffee to get there, you get there.
Cool. I like that. I heard one time, and this was, I think, back when I first started learning about fasting, I was hearing somebody, and maybe you've heard this as well as you're studying and hearing and looking into it. There was a dog racer, the guy that races dogs in the cold. I can't remember what you call it. Yeah. And he was talking about, because they were asking him of how he champion dogs. Dog sled team. There we go. And they were asking the guy someone was interviewing him and was asking him, how did you get these dogs to be such winners? They're so fast. They're like much faster than the other dog sleds. And what'd you do? And he says, well, I fast them sometimes, and they eat at different times. Sometimes they eat cold food. Sometimes it's heated. Sometimes they don't eat, they fast. And sometimes they eat more, sometimes less. And it's just so just like you were saying probably earlier about that athlete who may, have a delayed flight, they show up and their rhythm is off, but they still can perform because they're used to having this flexibility in their food. And that's what he was doing with his dog. So I actually have my dogs fast, and people think I'm crazy. They're like, you haven't fed your dogs? I'm like, no, because I want those dogs to eat when I give them food, not me having to go to their schedule and feed them, so my dogs fast. Sometimes they don't eat till the afternoon. It's once a day. And I mean, the thing is dogs so fast when they're sick, they don't eat.
Absolutely. They, right? Also some of the furrier dogs apparently will fast going into summer when it's hot, for exact same reasons we just talked about in terms of maintaining their body temperature while they're shedding the undercoat. And I don't know a lot about dogs, but I know that. My cats have never fasted. I think they fasted for maybe 7 minutes once, but that's very large.
Yeah, I have a wiener dog who's 14 and a half and an Australian Shepherd who's 13 now. And those Australian Shepherds, she's like, sometimes she doesn't care about eating. She's just like, I don't want to eat. And my dog,
she's running around the whole time, right?
yeah, exactly. Have you heard, I'm sure you have, Dr. Jason Fung? Have you listened
I have
to him?
heard of Dr. Jason Fung. He is another Canadian, by the way.
Yes. You know, one of the things that I like about him is that he's a doctor of, I believe, kidney and obesity specialist.
Think kidney, yeah. I think that's where, yeah, absolutely.
And so when I, as I started learning more about fasting over those last few years and really trying to listen to different people, of course, your book has been, at my heart all the time. But, you want to hear, and I enjoyed listening to him because he's a doctor and he has a whole different group of people that he works with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm like, and but the funny thing is he can be so irritated sometimes by like, just don't eat. Sometimes you listen to him, he's like,
super simple.
Evil.
Yeah.
And I think he asked his son one time, how do you lose weight? And I think he said his son was 6 or 7. And he asked his son, like, how do you lose weight? And he said, his son told him, just don't eat. Yeah. And he's like, it's that simple. But, like we talked about earlier, the hands don't stop. You have to sit on your hands, maybe.
Yeah. It is simple, but it's not easy by any means, right? And that's why we do have to find ways that work for us. And that was one of the big revelations about fasting is making little chunks of time where you're fasting. Because otherwise, it's not easy. You are surrounded by, not only you surrounded by food, and everybody uses the, evil food marketing and all that, but there's more to it than that. There's expectation. You go to a child's birthday party, and you're expected to kind of help out and have a slice of cake. And it's weird if you were to go to a celebratory dinner for someone's promotion and you get to the restaurant, everybody's ordering and you order a water. And that's all you're having. There are eating pressures in our environment that you just can't sort of ignore all the time. And I see why when people are trying to lose weight, they do pull in and they do start avoiding social interaction, right? Because it is too hard. And so you need good support. And you need to be, again, we've just been talking about this whole time, being flexible. Because while it is as simple as, just don't eat, it's not that easy.
Well, you're right. And, I have a client that I've been working with for almost 3 years now. And her husband like to have date night on Friday night. And she likes to, she's been doing a lot of fasting. But, he wants her to go out and eat and go to Mexican food and have chips, salsa and margarita. And, she's like, he wants me to do that with him. And she's like, I don't necessarily always want to do that, but I want to go spend it with him. And if I don't, then so what we've done is we've set up her Saturday as her 24-hour fast day. Like, if she was getting ready, because she was competing for a little while. So I'm like, if you're getting ready for a show, then we have to kind of cancel that out, not have it. And your husband has to understand. But in a regular setting of just normal lifestyle, if that's something you guys want to go do, then let's just have you, do your fast from the time you get home to the next day. And it works really good for her and she feels good. And then she can enjoy her time with her husband. And, and he's not sitting there going, oh, you're not eating. And, it's just this whole thing. And so I think that
is important because, end of day date night will always be more important than broccoli, right? So you've got to build in this amount of flexibility so that you can thrive in the society we live in, right? And it would be easy if we all decided to buy a cabin in the woods, go up there with some weights and 40 cans of tuna and come back shredded, right? But for everyone else, right, we've got to interact and we've got to be social and we've got to maintain relationships. So you have to be flexible. There's no other way around it to be successful.
Right. Oh my goodness. So I know there's so many things I want to talk to you about, and our time is kind of winding down here, unfortunately, because I know I still have a list of things I wanted to visit with you about. We probably have to have you. Yeah, we'll probably have to have you back on. I don't know what your January looks like, but it'd be fun to have you back on, and maybe because it's the beginning of the year and everyone's kind of trying to do new things, and maybe it's a good time to have you back on so we can talk about more. Because I know you've got you've got 3 other books, which one of them is our giveaway question. We have 3 other books for you. I was looking at some of your blogs, and the reverse taper is something that is very intriguing. And then I also liked how you talked about intermittent feeding.
Yes.
Which is new and different for me, and I hadn't really heard about that. So maybe, it just didn't sink in if I had heard about it from you already. One of the couple things I wrote down that you've written on your website: we cannot eat everything available to us. Period. Food is simply too abundant, too available.
Yes.
Back away from the kitchen. Do not go past the kitchen and back away.
Yes.
You didn't write that. I added the back away from the kitchen.
I like to back away. It's good. But you know what? It's a valid point, right? You do. There are constraints built in, and the important thing is making sure that whatever constraints you build in are yours. And I think that people take constraints they read about in magazines, whether it's not eating after 6 or whatever it is, and they take ones that they doesn't fit their lifestyle, and then they're doomed for failure. So I always think about the poor people who work shift work, right? They're the epitome of needing to be flexible, right?
Yes.
So you always have to pick the constraints that work for you and then stick with them.
Right. I've worked with some people like that, and they're, they're like, I can't eat it here. I had a girl I was getting ready for a competition years ago, and she was a nurse, one of the lead nurses in the operating room. Yeah. And she was like, I'm sometimes in there for 12 hours. And so we would, she'd have a little snack maybe in her pocket. She'd run to the ladies' room and eat some, but then she was fasting for a lot of times too. So just like you say, in the flexibility, and we got her in great, condition, and she was in that job setting, so yeah. And you wrote this too. You said, we do not have to eat all the time. Therefore, we are free to choose when we eat. And I think that is really important for people to remember that food does not control us. We are supposed to control the food and our appetite, and just learning how to do that. And I think, like you've taught, fasting, different types of fast, and intermittent feeding helps us to learn to control our appetite.
Yeah, and it's being realistic with what you want. Some people, we love breakfast for dinner, right? So if it's pancakes for it's pancakes for dinner, right? So you get to decide what you're eating when you're eating it. If you want to take an extreme, there is, I'm sure, a way to have a half cup of ice cream for breakfast, and as crazy as that sounds, still get contest ready. Like it's doable. You just have to accept the fact that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different routes. I love the flexibility and talking about flexibility. Maybe just for a couple minutes, and then we're going to have to wind down, because speaking of flexibility, and my husband's going to be chomping at the bit to go, because we're on a time frame here. Right. Restaurants start shutting down. I know we've got one that the manager's going to keep it open, make sure we get in there. So maybe just spend a couple minutes on reverse taper. Maybe just kind of what is that, and that might be intriguing people to come in and learn more. So
the thing I liked about reverse taper was a concept that I developed with my friend John Barbin, and we were talking about, one of the main problems with dieting, and you've probably seen this a lot with people who compete, is you start at maintenance, you cut all the way down to very, very low calories, you do your show, and then what, right? Or you get a client and they eat lower and lower and lower amount of calories, and then they get to their goal body weight, and then what? Right. So what we said, we're going to do the opposite, right? We're going to start very, very low, and we're going to gradually eat up and meet our goal weight with whatever calories it takes to maintain that weight. Now, it does mean that most of the weight loss happens early, and it's a slow, that last 5 or 6 pounds is a slow loss. But what you end up with is you're eating your ideal amount of food at your ideal body